The Bmore Football Podcast is brought to you by Rice Law.
Hello, welcome inside the latest edition. It is the Bmore Football Podcast over there. He is the longtime esteemed Baltimore Sun columnist. It's Mike Preston. I'm Jerry Coleman. We're here every week, folks, and you can find us on multiple platforms, whether it be YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Record downloads on our last podcast, Presto. John Harbaugh's firing had a lot to do with that. But again, Bmore Sports Pod. You're already there. Just tell a friend. That's where you can follow us. And also watch us, as always, at BaltimoreSun.com. In this episode, Mike and I, we talk about the State of the Ravens press conference featuring Steve Bisciotti and Eric DeCosta on a limited basis. In addition, we'll preview the divisional round of the playoffs. That resumes this weekend without a team from the AFC North. Shocking absolutely nobody. But as always, we kick off with For the Birds, brought to you by Rice Law. Hey, Baltimore football fans, if you've been hurt in a car accident, don't go at it alone. The lawyers at Rice Law know how to fight for the compensation you deserve. Protect yourself, protect your family, and remember, best advice, call Rice. Learn more by going to ricelawmd.com. Again, that website is ricelawmd.com. All right, Mike, for the first time in 8 years, we got to hear from Steve Bisciotti in a press conference situation in the building that he owns. Obviously, this was a ramification of the John Harbaugh firing, but what did you think of the biscuit? I mean, he was very open, went for about an hour. You were named his third favorite reporter, which I'm sure you took home with, great accolades. But
great honor.
I didn't make the list, which didn't surprise me because I guess, we'll probably hear when I play my question why I didn't make the list. But your takeaway from what he had to say.
The 3 E's: entertaining, engaging, enlightening. I thought when you walked away, you knew exactly what happened, how it happened. He also talked about his relationship with John Harbaugh, who was the head coach here for 18 years. I was pretty impressed with it. It gave you a glimpse of what was going on, how he talked to players. And it was very similar to 2007 when he got rid of Brian Billick. Did the same exact thing, is talk to the players, made his choice, made his decision. And he talked about, the things that are good for him, like instincts. And I'm like, that's what you want from the owner, or his instincts, because the man invested $5,000 in that Aerotech company in 1983, 1986, something like that. He's worth $8.5 billion. That's a pretty good return on your investment. So if he wants to talk about those things, I'll listen and see what you can pick up. And I picked up a lot.
Yeah, and much respect to Steve Bisciotti because he is a self-made man, unlike a lot of these people walking around taking over NFL teams because their daddy or mother or grandfather passed away. Steve did it on his own. And I want everyone to know, though, in my opinion, this was not a real press conference. Why? Because we were all assigned a number. And, you went earlier than me. I was 16. But in a legitimate press conference, you just call out questions, okay? That's the way it would work in a big market like New York, LA, or Philly. Maybe not in Baltimore. The truth is the Ravens were afraid to let media just call out questions at Steve Bisciotti. Maybe he would be discombobulated or not, but that wasn't a legit press conference. That was a gathering of the media where everyone took a deli number and was assigned a question.
See, but I liked it that way because it was orderly. When these press conferences, you see them on TV, especially with the president of the United States, they're all yelling and screaming at each other, and the person with the loudest voice, sometimes they win, and the other ones are kind of left out. It was orderly. It was very productive, and you got your questions in. And sometimes you were only allowed to ask one question, but some people ask questions that had like 4 different answers to them. I get that. I understand that.
Guilty.
But for the most part, it was done in a decent and orderly procedure, and that's what I wanted, because they had the national media there, they had some other people there, so forth, who had nothing to do with media but team officials. So I respect the way it was handled.
Well, two things. You know how I feel because I have one of the louder voices and make sure that I get my question in. If it were a real press conference, I wouldn't have had to wait till number 16 to get my question in. I can promise you that.
Well, and plus you always set up in the front. So
Yeah.
you're always in that front row. So you can get your question in really quick. But remember this one, they took the seats and said, oh, the first 4 or 5 rows are for team officials, which was kind of funny because you remember when I walked up and I sat right next to Ozzie just to mess
That
with
was
him a
that
little
was
bit.
my favorite part before the press conference started.
But you got to have some fun with this thing, and I did, and I had a blast. To tell you the truth, it was a pretty good day for me.
I had fun too, and let's get to it. The first thing he was asked was the big elephant in the room, and that was the firing of John Harbaugh. And why did you fire him there, Biscuit, after 18 years?
I guess the hardest part was the reasons, and unfortunately, most of these can't get traced back to John necessarily, but factually, we led the league in giving up big leads in the fourth quarter. It's not something that winning organizations do. We have underperformed based on our seeding in the playoffs. Very disappointing. A lot of players involved, a lot of our great players involved, making mistakes that they don't make during the regular season very often. But I just thought it was something that in the last 10 years, we've won the 3rd most games in the NFL. And yet people were saying we were underachievers. And so we were, and we had to own that.
Look, I appreciate the honesty, and I have no problem with the way he did it by telephone. I have, conversed with Coach Harbaugh. He holds no animosity whatsoever. As Steve said during the press conference, I wasn't going to make him drive back to the facility. But, I mean, I don't think he's holding a grudge against John Harbaugh like he felt the way Brian Billick sort of didn't end well with that relationship. It was two different scenarios to me, the way he concluded with Billick and the way he ended things with Harbaugh.
Well, one, I like the way he addressed the double-digit leads in the fourth quarter. That had to be a determining factor. If you go back to 2 years ago, they lose to Kansas City in the AFC Championship game here. They had the best record in the NFL. They lose that game because basically they forgot to run the football in that game. And then the following year, they go to Buffalo, and they lose to the Bills in a divisional game. All right. And then this year, they don't make the playoffs. Well, you see your team in decline. And all these people kept saying they should have hired Mike McDonald. No one fires the head coach after he plays in the AFC Championship game. Very seldom does that happen. But those are the things you saw going on with this football team. They were working in reverse. And when that happens, you have to look at the head coach. You have to look at the coaching staff. And he did all of those things. And I get it. As for the way he was fired, that is the dumbest thing I ever heard. And I understand the reporters who had to go out and find this out because you report the facts. But you also need to report that they're really good friends. And you saw that. In the 18 years when you went to training camp, I used to watch Bisciotti meet with Harbaugh after tough losses at M&T Bank Stadium because I could see it right from the press box.
In the Sky Suite.
Yes. They were buddies. So if he got rid of him, to me, it's like him firing Ozzie Newsome or Eric DeCosta. It happened, but it's not disrespectful. It's not some way of showing, we're just trying to show him up. No, it happened. But they remain very good friends. And as Bisciotti said yesterday, hey, we are friends and we remain friends, and that's the way it is. And Jerry, as you said already, we both received those messages from John Harbaugh. He's in a very good place. He's very happy. So leave that alone, folks. Don't go there because you really don't know their relationship at all.
No, there's no animosity whatsoever. So regarding Coach Harbaugh, a number of questions were asked before the microphone was handed to me. So I had to come up with something. I mean, all the relevant questions that I had were already asked. So, I directed it towards the outcome of the Pittsburgh game and how much that dictated what he was going to do with his head coach.
Hey, Steve, over here. I do have a two-part question for you.
I knew you would, Jerry. I'm surprised you didn't have a four-part question.
If they would allow me, I would. If Tyler Loop makes that field goal, is John Harbaugh still here coaching this team?
For a week.
For a week, okay. And then I guess a follow-up, because it's been a while. What was your role? What was your input with the whole Justin Tucker situation and how that went down and led to Tyler Loop being here? We haven't heard from you about that, so I was anxious to hear.
None.
When the reports came out, how did you take all that? What was your reaction, and how did you?
Deferred to Eric and John.
Do you think if Justin were here, it would have been different?
No.
Fair enough.
All right, he went on, and there was a conversation between him and DeCosta that maybe, who said Tucker was going to make that field goal. I have to say, I was stunned at his reply when he said he would last another week. What if they had won the football game against Pittsburgh and went on to the playoffs and won that divisional round or the wild card game? What if they had won? Would he still have fired the coach then? So I dropped the ball and not following up on that. But that was a jaw dropper. He had already made up his mind, Mike.
I thought so. I thought unless John Harbaugh got to the Super Bowl, I think he was done. And I think you could see the signs.
More of the Bmore Football Podcast right after this.
At Rice Law, we've won millions for our injury clients, taken on the biggest insurance companies, and fought in the toughest courtrooms, and made it clear, strong lawyers win strong cases. But none of that matters today. The only case that matters is yours, your fight, your future. And we're ready to go to battle for you. We don't rest on past victories. We fight every case like it's our only one. Because at Rice Law, the most important victory is the one we win for you.
Rice Law. Best advice, call Rice.
Shake Shack is an amazingly fun urban dining experience, so treat yourself this holiday season with some all-time Shake Shack favorites. From the Shack Burger and crinkle-cut fries to those unbelievably delicious hand-spun shakes, or try some of the limited-time menu items throughout the year. Stop by Shake Shack's newest location at the Festival at Wood Home Shops in Pikesville. See you there. Shop Maryland's largest adult-use and medical cannabis menu, located at 1114 Cathedral Street in Baltimore, with medical delivery available throughout Maryland 7 days a week, only at Relief Shop.
For the last 25 years, Wood Home Insurance has been Baltimore's premier independent home, auto, and business insurance broker, representing over 30 carriers. For example, need an auto quote? Wood Home shops them all. Geico, Progressive, Travelers, AAA, Safeco, and Selective, and sends you back the best rates possible. I have personally been a client for over 2 decades, and they are world-class in service. Wood Home's owner, Rich Gottlieb, is happy to schedule a Zoom appointment with you at your convenience. Oh, and Rich is a longtime Ravens season ticket holder, so when at the game, let him know where you're tailgating. He'll drop by and say hello. So for all your needs, it's Wood Home Insurance, 410-580-2800 or woodhomeinsurance.com.
Meet the newest member of the Jack Daniels family, Jack Daniels Tennessee Blackberry. Jack Daniels takes pride in Old Number 7 being the backbone of all our flavors, and Jack Daniels Blackberry is no exception. A combination of our proprietary black liqueur and Jack Daniels' unique and unmistakable character, Jack Blackberry is a highly versatile juxtaposition of flavor. Delightfully sweet, bold, vibrant, and refreshing, Jack Blackberry is easily enjoyed with your favorite mixer, in a cocktail, or while enjoying your next football game. Jack Daniels Tennessee Blackberry is here, and as always, Jack Daniels reminds you to drink responsibly. For years, we were told to say no, but Verano is rewriting that story with award-winning flower, vapes, edibles, concentrates, and topicals for every kind of vibe. Shop smart with Savvy. Treat yourself with Encore chocolates. Relax with an Avexia bath soak, or keep it light with Bits gummies. Want something premium? Grab Essence pre-rolls or a Reserve 8th. Verano makes premium cannabis for all. Find out for yourself. Head to one of our original sponsors, Relief Shop in Baltimore, Baltimore on Cathedral Avenue and mention Bmore Verano for an exclusive deal. That's Bmore Verano. This ad and products are intended for legal consumers 21 and over. Effective Solutions, your one-stop shop for commercial contracting. Everything from excavation and site development to emergency remediation and restoration. Effective Solutions specializes in many forms of commercial and mixed-use construction. With a dedicated staff and a commitment to quality, Effective Solutions delivers every time.
And I'll go back to the first 6 games of the season when they didn't play very hard and they lost, and they were like, oh, this is not a Harbaugh. This is not characteristic of his teams. They always play very hard. They didn't play hard that game. And I was surprised by that. But then you take it further along those lines. You saw some things that didn't happen during the season. They didn't have an offensive identity. They couldn't run the football. They didn't use Derrick Henry at the end of the New England game. Used the rotation. That's ridiculous. The defense never got any better. So there were a lot of signs there to see what was going to happen, and you would just hope they would break out of it and possibly get to the Super Bowl, but it never happened. But they would have lost to Houston, just like the Steelers did on Monday night.
Yeah.
And that's why when he said another week, I just took it as saying, yeah, he would have lasted another week, but they didn't have it. It wasn't going on. It wasn't working in Baltimore.
Fair enough. And the follow-up question regarding Justin Tucker, I've received some feedback on social media about that. Folks, let me explain to you. This was the first time we heard from the owner in 8 years. I could have asked him about the loss at the AFC Championship game or Mark Andrews dropping a pass. It's been that long since we heard from him. I know you probably thought, Mike, okay, who cares about Justin Tucker? Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't. But my opinion was we hadn't heard from the decision maker about one of the biggest scandals in Ravens history. And, you know, a lot of people think if Justin Tucker had been out there in Pittsburgh, they would have been moving on to the playoffs. So that's why the question had to be asked, I thought. Again, if you don't ask then when?
Well, Jerry, I put it to you this way. When they played that game and they lose because he misses the field goal, my phone was blowing up. Oh, it should have kept Justin Tucker, If Justin Tucker plays in that game, I'm pretty sure he kicks and wins that game. All right. I don't care what anybody says, because usually when it's Justin Tucker, he's Mr. Automatic. We already knew that he was going to win the game. All right. And if it was 55 yards, 40 yards, whatever, he was Justin Tucker. All right. So I understand the question. I really do. I get it. And he had to be asked that because he hadn't spoken the whole time. Hadn't spoken in a couple years. So, yeah, what were you involved? Were you involved in the decision making with Justin Tucker? All right, could you give us some type of response? And he didn't, and he said he left it up to Eric DeCosta and basically Ozzie Newsome. Those were the two guys, and I get that, I understand that too. But he's the owner. I would ask that question. I mean, and I didn't get a chance to because you came after me, but I was too busy asking about Mike Tomlin. That was
your question.
But it had to be asked.
Yeah, and for the low information, uneducated fanboys out there that don't understand how a press conference works, when you have the subject in front of you once every 8 years, you ask what you can ask. And you don't speak for the entire fan base when you say nobody cares about what happened with Justin Tucker. There's a lot of people that want to know what the owner's thoughts were. As John Harbaugh was out there in the face of the franchise, Eric DeCosta never had to really address it.
Well, Jerry, it goes back to pretty much what everyone kept asking Steve Bisciotti for the last whatever years when he was doing his press conference. Are you going to sell the team? You just got to ask that question. Yeah. You have to ask the question. Someone has to ask that, and somebody did yesterday. Yep. Same thing. I mean, it's a formality, and you keep hearing all of these rumors about he's going to sell the team and so forth and whatever. But when you get in that position, you have to ask questions regardless of what they're about and where they come from, but you ask those questions.
And that was on my list too. But again, I was only allowed a 4-part question, which the owner, he didn't care. By the way, for these people that think, oh, he was really ticked off at me, trust me, I would have heard from the PR department if he was really that ticked off. I wouldn't have cared either. Now,
we know how that works.
Now that brings us to you. And after that loss to the Steelers, Pittsburgh survived for one more week. We're in the middle of the press conference. Your phone's going off. You were handed the microphone, and you delivered the question of the press conference and got the gem answer.
Steve, I just had these reports that Mike Tomlin got terminated or stepped down.
I'm sorry, Mike.
Mike Tomlin stepped down at Pittsburgh.
He did? Is it official?
That's what I keep hearing. So, is he a candidate here?
Holy shit, Mike, wouldn't that be awesome? Only if John takes the Pittsburgh job. Wow, wouldn't that be interesting? I don't know, that thing last week maybe disqualified him from my opening after our kicker missed a kick to let them advance. Good for Mike. Yeah, I don't know. Talk to him. I love Mike. I mean, I've admired Mike for 18 years, and that's really shocking that he did it that way.
So were you surprised that Tomlin didn't give the Rooneys a chance to fire him? And way to get that FCC violation for any broadcast network that carried that live.
You know, you went into that and you just kind of were stunned by the response, not of the owner, but of Tomlin, because there's a lot of racial stuff going on in that city and so forth. And you thought maybe it was time. I mean, it's just like John Harbaugh. Well, Mike Tomlin, after 19 years in a city, maybe it's time. They need a new voice. I get that. I understand that. If he was competing on the list to be hired here, I'd hire him in a heartbeat. Oh my goodness, this guy, this team needs some fire. You know, they need some energy. He breathes life into an organization. He's only 53 years old. I know he looks older, but that happens with coaches, and when you're the president of the United States, you always look older, but he's only 53. You can get some more mileage out of his tires, definitely.
He's not putting on Ravens gear, presto.
I mean, I don't think he will either, but I'm just saying I would hire him. And let me tell you something. The Ravens will make the call. They will call him to see if he's available. All right? You can bank on that one, because if you can get Mike Tomlin, a proven head coach, he's a Super Bowl winner. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. All right? No, you take that. You go get him. And I like that. I like his energy. I like what he brought to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, from reports that he's going to just sit out a year, I get that. I understand that. But, man, let me tell you something. If I could hire Mike Tomlin, I wouldn't even think about it 2 times. And you heard his initial response. When I asked him about, can he become the coach of the Ravens, he goes, oh, that's awesome. And then he had to backtrack a little bit, about beating on his chest and whatever. Get out of here, Steve. Beat on your chest. I don't care. Did you see what the Chicago Bears coach did after they upset the Packers last week?
Yeah.
Did you hear him in the locker room? Or should I talk about what Brian Billick said after the Ravens beat the Tennessee Titans during the regular season and then had to go face them again down there in Tennessee? Coaches say whatever they want. They do all kind of crazy things. I like that. I like coaches who are a little nutty, a little wacky. And let's remember what John Harbaugh did 2 years ago. Remember when he started dancing in the locker room? It was the worst dancing I've ever seen. But I was happy for him because he was elated. That's what they do. They do crazy stuff. I want that from a coach.
Interesting. Well, we'll see what Tomlin decides to do. I think he takes the year off and then comes back, but who knows? I thought Harbaugh would do that. I know Bisciotti was suggesting, I thought that was audacious, suggesting that John take the year off when this week John's visiting the Giants and he's already interviewed with the Falcons. It's like, who are you to tell the coach to take the year off? Even though you're going to actually save money if he does take the year off.
He's saving $17.5 million. I would suggest that you go and find another head coaching job too. Yeah. If you save 17.5, here, John, Go check out this place. Go check out that place. Check out that place and see what happens. Nah, man, he's saving some bank. That's what it's all about. It's about
Yeah,
ring.
and that's what I meant. I mean, if Harbaugh takes another job, then he doesn't have to pay him. If he sits the year out, he has to pay him, and he
Right.
didn't mind that. But it's just not his position to tell the former coach what he should do, in my opinion. That's all. All right, I want to get to GM Eric DaCosta, who, if you're watching on YouTube or you've seen some of the clips, I thought he looked very uncomfortable during a large portion of this as he's sitting next to his boss, and the boss is talking about a lack of pass rush and the offensive line and the late fourth quarter losses and the weaknesses of this team. So obviously Eric has some work to do, but he's also trying to negotiate a contract with Lamar and hire a coach. But what did you think about what he had to say and the way he looked as Steve Bisciotti sitting right next to him? It reminded me of Billick and back in the day with Harbaugh when Bisciotti's sitting next to him offering an honest critique, and they're sitting there like, wow, I'm getting reprimanded right here in public.
Well, I think, first of all, Steve Bisciotti was a little nervous right out of the gate. You could see that. And there were times when you could feel it in the room. But then he got more comfortable as he started talking more and more. And for Eric DaCosta, so what if your owner starts telling you about what's wrong with your football team? We already knew that. It was no big deal. You didn't have a pass rush. Your secondary wasn't very good. Your offensive line couldn't pass block. Your quarterback couldn't decide if he wanted to run, if he wanted to throw. They had a whole bunch of issues going on with this team. So what did you think was going to happen? You just got to sit there and you just suck it up and say, all right, yeah. Now, what do you do about it? You get your quarterback and you get him to do his contract or redo his deal. All right. And you know what was interesting was when Steve Bisciotti started talking, and I'm not an agent. He started talking about, well, if he doesn't accept the present status, or we can go back to the old contract, which is whatever it is, but not the $75 million he's going to make this season or next season. That's null and void for some reason. I don't know that, but that's what he said. But he also told him, we want to get this done before we go into free agency. That's the key. How much money do you have to go out and buy? So if you paid him $75 million, that's 24% of the salary cap. That can't exist. That can't happen. But if you go out and you get it down a little bit, the numbers down, then you can go out and find out which free agents you want. And then you can go out and who do you draft? And basically, he told him what was going on. You need to go find pass rushers. You need to go find some offensive linemen. And I've been saying that forever. All right. You can have the greatest quarterback you want. You need to go out and you have to be able to protect him, and you have to rush the passer, build your interior lines. And, you know, as I learned from the late Ted Marchibroda, it's the best team doesn't always win the Super Bowl. It's the team with the least amount of weaknesses, guys. That's the way it's done. And teams in the NFL, opposing teams, will exploit your weaknesses. That's the key.
And Eric should feel fortunate he wasn't asked a question about Odafe Oweh, who 2 days before that had a Chargers record 3 sacks and a playoff win, or loss, I should say. But still 3 more sacks than he recorded, I think, here.
And you got to look at your scheme. You know, what's going on in your scheme? Why are you asking him to cover on the back end? Why are you asking him to drop back and cover running backs and tight ends 10 yards down the field? No, go fetch. Go rush the quarterback. And they did the same thing with Patrick Queen before he went to Pittsburgh. He's not a middle linebacker. He was an outside linebacker, weak side linebacker. Play to the strengths of your players and to your team.
What was interesting was we heard a lot about Lamar Jackson. I don't remember Derrick Henry's name being mentioned once during that press conference. Maybe it wasn't relevant, but Lamar certainly is. And the big question to Steve Bisciotti was, you know, with the firing of John Harbaugh, what role did Lamar play there, Biscuit?
Lamar is really, really a non-confrontational person. And when I spoke to him Monday night, he said to me, Everybody's saying I got a problem with Monken. I don't really have a problem with Monken. I don't know where that comes from. And he said, and then I hear I've got a problem with Harbs, and I don't have a problem with Harbs. I don't know where that comes from. We got to make changes, probably, but that's probably more for you and E. And I said, well, your opinion matters, and we talked about it. And but again, he was one of the many. I'm going to turn my phone off before it starts ringing. Didn't put it on vibrate. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think that the players had really a large part of my decision. My partners here probably had, that's an 80-20 thing.
How much do you buy that? Because, I mean, we heard that Lamar spoke with him. I believe guys like Kyle Hamilton and Ronnie Stanley probably caught his ear as well. I don't know how many other players went to him or he asked their opinion, but he definitely asked their opinion. He said he's not giving them the power in terms of the next coach when it comes to Lamar. But how did you take that answer? I mean, it was kind of ambiguous to me.
Well, everyone who covers this team on a regular basis knows that there were problems going on as far as Lamar with John Harbaugh, Lamar with Monken. They can say whatever they want, but we all know the truth, okay? Yeah. They had some issues, all right? And then you listen to Eric DeCosta later on during the press conference where he goes, yeah, they needed to communicate better. We have to over-communicate, all right? That's the way he termed it. So we kind of knew what was going on there. What I took away from this was basically they want him, and I wrote about this at the beginning of the season, become the leader of this team. All right. And they talked about when we find the final 5 candidates, you need to come up and talk to them and tell us your thoughts. Well, that's being a leader. That's what you do. You have to provide that energy, provide that fire, and he didn't do it, and especially didn't do it last season. They want you to become the leader, the face of this franchise. He has to step up to the plate. Now, will it get done? I don't know, but at least he challenged him. And what I really took away from this was where he just said, all right, I will listen to you. I will listen to all the players, but you have no control. All right. So the bottom line is I will make the decisions. All right. I will talk to my business partners. I will talk to the people over at the complex, but I will make the final decision. And that's the way I took it. But
that's the way it should be.
Yeah. Step up to the plate, Lamar. Take over this team. Become the leader that we want you to be. And if that means taking less money on that contract next season, then do that so we can go get some free agents, go get you some help. But you have to help us, and then we'll help you. And that's all part of being a leader.
Yeah, I thought they were very transparent about that. They even said that Eric DeCosta is texting Lamar after every coach interview. Now, about having Lamar in the room when the coaches, you get down to the final 5. Here's what Steve had to say about that. He kind of challenged him, as you mentioned, to be a part of the process.
I said to Lamar last night, when they call me up from Florida, you better get your ass up here too. Because if you want to do the interviewing, these are going to be full-day meetings like they were 18 years ago. And they go from department to department to department, right? So I said to Lamar, you can jump on my plane or find another way to get up there. But if you're that interested, then we're going to get a schedule. He's going to call me up. He's going to offer you the same luxury. And I said, I hope you take it. And he said, yes, sir. I think I will. So we'll find out.
That's interesting because now, again, he challenged his quarterback publicly. We will find out. How much of an impact should Lamar have? Just one player. I understand he's the franchise quarterback and all that. But what if they're looking at defensive coaches like an Anthony Weaver or Jesse Minter?
Again, you go back to building your team where you have weaknesses. And then you have to balance up offensively and defensively. That's how you have to do this. Instead of everyone keeps saying, oh, we build around the best offensive player. No, you don't. All right. It didn't work in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow. All right. It didn't work with Cleveland, even with Nick Chubb and then Deshaun Watson. No, you build balance. That's what it's about. All right. And I love that they just came out and said this. You need to get your butt up here. All right. He's basically saying, take over this football team. And earlier in the press conference, you remember when he said, no, he is their quarterback. We want him to be our quarterback. All right. That's telling him, like, please control this football team. So guess what that means, Lamar? That means you have to go to practices. Even when you're hurt, you have to practice. You have to step up. You have to provide that energy. All right. And I like that. I want that from a quarterback. And in no other position besides quarterback can you get that. You can get it from a middle linebacker, some of it. You can get it from a corner, but it has to come from your quarterback because he's the central figure of your entire football team. And they dared him to do it. And I like the challenge. And guess what? You saw that in the last game when they played against Pittsburgh and Tyler Loop missed that directional kick and Lamar went over and talked to him. And I'm like, finally, yeah. He went over and said, no, what happened? You can't kick that like that. I'm like, yes, that's what you want from your quarterback. Even if he messes up and screws up in a game, you still want that from a quarterback. He has to be fiery. He has to be a competitor, and you have to get in some faces. That's just the nature of the position.
There was a funny line. I did see that if the Ravens invited Lamar up for a coaching interview decision on a Wednesday, that would be a bad time to do it because he doesn't Wednesday. All right, moving on. The one thing Bisciotti kept reiterating was that, as you said, this deal needs to get done before March so they can free up some salary cap room. But that puts more pressure on Eric DeCosta, doesn't it? Because as I had mentioned earlier, this guy is interviewing coaches for the first time in 18 years. He talked about it yesterday. It's a process he's never been through. And he's trying to deal with this quarterback who doesn't have an agent and get this deal done before March free agency begins.
Well, what I like was the owner is talking to Lamar. It's not Eric DeCosta. It's the owner. All right. When the owner calls, it's like E.F. Hutton. Remember that old E.F. Hutton commercial when he calls people listen? Well, you got to listen to the owner because he's the one who signs your paychecks. I like that. I want that. Eric DeCosta has had numerous opportunities to do deals with Lamar in the past, but this is different because now you have the owner and then you have a new head coach coming in. I want to see what happens. This is going to be interesting to see what goes on with a new head coach and your star quarterback and Derrick Henry. This just gets spicy during the offseason. I want to see what happens in training camp. Do you continue to have your practices at 2:00 in the heat of the day, or do you go at 8:00 in the morning when everybody else is practicing around the NFL? Yeah, keep an eye on this. This is going to get interesting.
Yeah, and it's a cavalcade of coaches coming through. It's already double figures. Here's Bisciotti on the search for the second ever head coach he's going to hire.
I am very intrigued by coaches that were the hottest offensive and defensive coordinators 5, 6, 7 years ago in their cycles and got jobs and went to teams that were non-competitive and didn't have a quarterback. And they grind for 3 or 4 years, and they're caught up in the cycle of many of my partners that are turning these. I think it's average 4 years career, right? I think the head coach is about 4 years. As we proved, I think we've got a quarter out now, right? 8, 9. So, the one thing that I know that I will probably take it on the chin is if our final candidate is an ex-coach who has a losing record.
Yeah, he will take it on the chin if he goes that direction. Don't you think, Mike?
Yeah, that would be a little strange, but I understand his point. I mean, you look at Stefanski in Cleveland, that's just a poorly run organization. Look at Jim Schwartz, who's the defensive coordinator in Cleveland. He was in Detroit. They had a history of losing. I understand what he's saying. You know, me personally, I look more for hot coordinators. I look for guys who have done it, can rebuild, but yet at the same time show that kind of fire, that energy where you can dominate in the locker room. But again, you look back and say, they had a special teams coach from Philadelphia and John Harbaugh, and look how that turned out. So again, it comes back to instincts, and I'm going to put it on the owner. All right, you have to make this call. All right, you've produced winners before with John Harbaugh. Do it again. All right, pull it again. I'm not buying any of this about losers and so forth. You make the call. It's your decision, and we'll see what happens.
We talked about how he struck gold one time. We'll see if he can do it again. We also have talked about the empty seats at M&T Bank Stadium this year throughout the season. You've taken note of that, and so have I. Ravens posted their worst home record ever. And here's what Bisciotti said about, the worst thing a franchise can have is apathy.
I know the volume went up this year, and I know the majority of that turned on John. And I think it did affect me. It was one of the things that I'm putting together. And I'll be honest with you, when you say the effect it had, you know what effect it had on me? I couldn't stand people attacking my friend. So some of the stuff that they talked about with John ate me alive. And so, like I said, part of my feeling like when my instinct says, now's the time, it was, I get to relieve John of all that crap too. And John gets to start anew, and John gets to be the everybody's number one choice to be that. And so I kind of thought, again, that there is never a good time, but we went backwards the last 3 years.
And listen, he's watching the game from his Sky Suite. He can hear the booing. That episode at the end of the Houston game where Harbaugh was booed off the field by the fans. And again, a franchise low in terms of home victories. That was a collective big negative for John Harbaugh, and I think helped make Steve's decision a little bit easier.
Well, it's all about wins and losses and money and putting fans in the stands. That's what it's about. That's the bottom line for every owner. And as far as his friendship with Harbaugh, every time they lost, you could hear the same people calling in all the time, complaining about it's Harbaugh's fault. He's a loser. He's lost the locker room. And I really like what Steve Bisciotti said Tuesday. It's a team game. All right. So if you want to put the blame on Harbaugh, that's fine. But I can go back and look at their offensive line, and I could show you 6 or 7 blocks that were missed. I could show you your pass rush that you didn't lack. I could show you your cornerbacks in the secondary who couldn't cover, in safeties that now you got to use Kyle Hamilton to play outside linebacker instead of letting him play too deep. There were a lot of things that went wrong. So do you blame the head coach? Ultimately, yes, you do, because he's the guy who runs the show. But it was a team effort. They failed. That's why they finished to go 8-9. And I don't care what anybody says. Technically, this was the best team in the history of the Ravens.
Yeah, and they didn't even make the postseason.
More of the Bmore Football Podcast right after this.
At Rice Law, we've won millions for our injury clients, taken on the biggest insurance companies, and fought in the toughest courtrooms, and made it clear, strong lawyers win strong cases. But none of that matters today. The only case that matters is yours, your fight, your future. And we're ready to go to battle for you. We don't rest on past victories. We fight every case like it's our only one. Because at Rice Law, the most important victory is the one we win for you.
Rice Law. Best advice, call Rice.
Shake Shack is an amazingly fun urban dining experience, so treat yourself this holiday season with some all-time Shake Shack favorites. From the Shack Burger and crinkle-cut fries to those unbelievably delicious hand-spun shakes, or try some of the limited-time menu items throughout the year. Stop by Shake Shack's newest location at the Festival at Wood Home Shops in Pikesville. See you there. Shop Maryland's largest adult-use and medical cannabis menu, located at 1114 Cathedral Street in Baltimore, with medical delivery available throughout Maryland 7 days a week, only at Relief Shop.
For the last 25 years, Wood Home Insurance has been Baltimore's premier independent home, auto, and business insurance broker, representing over 30 carriers. For example, need an auto quote? Wood Home shops them all. Geico, Progressive, Travelers, AAA, Safeco, and Selective, and sends you back the best rates possible. I have personally been a client for over 2 decades, and they are world-class in service. Wood Home's owner, Rich Gottlieb, is happy to schedule a Zoom appointment with you at your convenience. Oh, and Rich is a longtime Ravens season ticket holder, so when at the game, let him know where you're tailgating. He'll drop by and say hello. So for all your needs, it's Wood Home Insurance, 410-580-2800 or woodhomeinsurance.com.
Meet the newest member of the Jack Daniels family, Jack Daniels Tennessee Blackberry. Jack Daniels takes pride in Old Number 7 being the backbone of all our flavors, and Jack Daniels Blackberry is no exception. A combination of our proprietary black liqueur and Jack Daniels' unique and unmistakable character, Jack Blackberry is a highly versatile juxtaposition of flavor. Delightfully sweet, bold, vibrant, and refreshing, Jack Blackberry is easily enjoyed with your favorite mixer, in a cocktail, or while enjoying your next football game. Jack Daniels Tennessee Blackberry is here, and as always, Jack Daniels reminds you to drink responsibly. For years, we were told to say no, but Verano is rewriting that story with award-winning flower, vapes, edibles, concentrates, and topicals for every kind of vibe. Shop smart with Savvy. Treat yourself with Encore chocolates. Relax with an Avexia bath soak, or keep it light with Bits gummies. Want something premium? Grab Essence pre-rolls or a Reserve Eighth. Verano makes premium cannabis for all. Find out for yourself. Head to one of our original sponsors, Relief Shop in Baltimore on Cathedral Avenue, and mention Bmore Verano for an exclusive deal. That's Bmore Verano. This ad and products are intended for legal consumers 21 and over. Effective Solutions, your one-stop shop for commercial contracting. Everything from excavation and site development to emergency remediation and restoration. Effective Solutions specializes in many forms of commercial and mixed-use construction. With a dedicated staff and a commitment to quality, Effective Solutions delivers every time.
All right, let's get to the final clip. And I was going to ask this. You referenced it earlier in the podcast. Bisciotti, how much longer is he going to be the head of this franchise? He's made it clear he's not handing it down.
I mean, all my friends, all my favorite people in the league 25 years ago were younger than I am now. And so when I watch Jerry and Bob, I mean, I still love them to death. They've always been there for me. They were younger than I was when I met them and joined this league. So I know that's always been a topic of conversation. How long am I going to? Because I kind of always said I'm not passing it down to the family. I made that decision 25 years ago. I don't think that's healthy for my family. I've seen families feud and ruin over these damn teams, and I was determined not to do it. But when I watch guys like Art Blank and Steve Ross and Jerry Jones, and Jerry talking about what part of his anatomy he would give up for a Super Bowl at 83 years old, I don't want to be there. I really don't. I want to win a couple Super Bowls and get the hell out. I'd love that to be in the next 10 years when I'm 75. That's my dream. If I got one of the top teams at 75, I'll probably stay till 76. So I'll probably bail somewhere around 10 years from now when I have a really bad season or back-to-back seasons. And he'll probably be coming with me.
Which I think surprised Eric DaCosta. He also talked about a gold jacket, which was nonsensical to me. But it'll be very interesting to see 10 years from now what happens with the team. Obviously, he's going to sell it for billions of dollars. I think he would want a local owner. He doesn't want an Irsay situation. He's a Baltimorean. You can hear the accent when he speaks. So I think he'll look for someone who's going to, have the best interest in the team at hand.
I think what happens is if he can win a Super Bowl or a couple, he'll sell the team, because we've been hearing this for years.
Yeah.
That he's going to sell the team. He's looking for ownership. The thing is, you have to have one. You got to have an established quarterback. You better have a franchise caliber quarterback. Two, you have to have a proven owner. And right now, they don't have the owner in place. All right. And once that happens and they're starting to move along and they start getting their credibility back and the wins back, that's when he might put the team up for sale. Until then, 3-4 years, whatever, but it takes time. You just can't come out and say, oh, I'm going to sell this team, and you don't have an established coach and you don't have an established quarterback.
Yeah. Interesting that he didn't want his family involved because of the turmoil he feels that brings along. And he's seen it firsthand when he goes to these owner meetings.
Yeah, that happens. And you're correct. You see that when you go to these owner meetings and what happens to families. And I assume that neither of his kids want to be involved in being an owner of the team. I get that, but that's just the way it is. And you move on. And like you said, he will find a local owner.
All right, one last thing I did want to bring up before we move on to the next segment, and that was Nnamdi Madubuike. A question was asked to Eric DaCosta about his status. And to me, that's not the Ravens' decision to make. That's Nnamdi's decision to make if he's going to still play. There also may be HIPAA laws involved with that. So they were very careful. But I think it's a foregone conclusion. This guy's not going to play another down with the Ravens, Mike.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but if I were him, neck injuries, yeah, you're done. You're finished. I'm not a doctor, but I know when you have those kind of injuries, you walk away from the game while you can, and you still have your health intact. And I assume he will.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, I may be wrong, but health comes first. All right, on to Baltimore and beyond, which is always presented by Relief Shop, Baltimore's best adult use and medical cannabis dispensary with 700 plus unique menu items, and home delivery is always available for medical patients right there on Cathedral Street. That's where you'll see the great Connor Welton. Wild card weekend is almost upon us. No, it's in the rearview mirror, thankfully. And I thought most of the games were pretty good. Although if you're a Green Bay Packers fan, you're wondering how your team choked that away. So time to focus on the divisional round, Presto. Let's talk about the final 8 teams that are still active and the matchups and who we like, starting Saturday at 4:30. The Bills visiting Denver. Of course, the Broncos coming off the bye. You know, it's going to be the Russ versus rest debate with these teams that are coming off the bye. But of course, I'm going with Denver over Buffalo. I'm never picking Buffalo.
Well, I'm going to take Josh Allen over Denver.
Okay.
I think he's just playing exceptionally well. I think Bo Nix is kind of iffy. I don't know what kind of performance I'm going to get from him. I think Denver's defense is very good. But when Josh Allen heats up and he's playing well, he's hard to defend. I think the Bills get it done there.
Yeah, I do want to give a golf clap to the Bills and to Josh Allen for winning their first road playoff game this century. That was quite an achievement. All right, at 8 o'clock on Saturday, you got the Niners, who just eliminated the Super Bowl champion Eagles and shut down A.J. Brown in his big mouth as he dropped passes. They're at the Seahawks. Seattle, of course, coming off a bye. I think Seattle beats them down again. I think this is like the third time in like a month these two teams have collided.
Yeah, I take Seattle in this one. I mean, they've had an extra week of rest. There's no Kittle. That's major for the 49ers. And I think their defense is a little bit beat up. They're a gritty team. I mean, you got to admire them for playing because they've lost some key people.
Yes.
But I think Seattle takes care of business.
And I'm glad you pointed it out because they've been so banged up, the Niners. That shows Ravens fans and other fans of teams around the league, hey, you can lose a couple of star players and actually win games still. You can't use that as an alibi.
Right, and they play hard. That's the key, and that's when I struggled with Harbaugh early in the season when they were 1-5. I didn't see them playing hard, and to me, that was unusual.
All right, next up, the upstart Texans visit the Patriots, who just came off the win. So did the Texans. Houston, as you say, defense travels. These are two defensive-minded coaches, and DeMeco Ryans and Mike Vrabel. I have the Texans winning in New England, Mike.
That's going to be interesting. I have New England winning in New England because C.J. Stroud is the X-Factor. He was terrible the other night against the Steelers. And can he play that poorly again in another playoff game? I don't know, but the Patriots are well coached. I like their quarterback. I think he makes plays. I think they win.
Yeah, Drake May, who got the MVP chance at M&T Bank Stadium this year, which I'm sure went over well with Steve Bisciotti in his skybox as the Patriots beat down the Ravens. All right, final game on Sunday, a little bit earlier than usually Sunday night football goes, 6:30 start. Rams playing at the Bears. Rams were very fortunate to win in Carolina, Mike, but I think they beat the Bears, who allowed Green Bay to choke, and they prevailed and came back on the Packers. That was a stunner.
Yeah, the Rams win. Stafford is playing out of his mind. I think he's going to get it done. I think on just a strong performance by him, and they'll get it done. And defensively, they can get after quarterbacks. They don't always have these great pass rushers, but they have guys who can bring it off the edge. So I think the Rams win that one.
All right, and then comes the AFC and NFC championship games. They will take place the following week. So we are back next week with plenty to talk about. The Ravens search for a new coach. I don't think they'll have a decision by the next time we congregate for the podcast, but we'll have playoff football, a lot of rumors and innuendo to talk about. It's not going to die for a while, and John Harbaugh may have a new job by the next time we reconvene. So be kind, be real, and make sure to be back for another episode. Whether you're uneducated or educated, we love the audience out there on the Bmore Football Podcast.
The Bmore Football Podcast is brought to you by Rice Law.